Save It for the Blind is sponsored by Kershaw Knives. Kershaw manufactures next-level pocket knives for outdoor enthusiasts. Save It for the Blind is now also being sponsored by Roseville Motorsports. Roseville Motorsports is the greater Sacramento area's premier destination for all your power sports vehicle needs. Stop in today to browse off-road vehicles from leading manufacturers like Polaris, Yamaha, and more. Rig 'em right, heavily seasoned gear for the die-hard waterfowl hunter. If you guys are enjoying the show, we'd love to hear from you and get your support. Please follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Give us a 5-star rating. Your reviews really help us grow and reach more people. Thank you for being a part of our community. No, I don't have any of it. I try to stay away.
I know.
The less people know, the better.
Yeah. You look on my Instagram, it's like conservation farmer. It's all my kids, and it's hardly ever posts.
Yeah, I stay away from it.
I'm a stalker. I'm on my wife's, and then I'm like scrolling about it. I don't post anything myself, so.
I keep up on Facebook just to see what other people post about random stuff to make myself feel good about why does somebody need to post this?
I'm like addicted to Marketplace, like just looking. I don't even know why. I'm like looking at boats that I already have a boat.
You have 2 boats.
And I don't need another boat, but it's like always looking for that. Or like, oh, here's a UTV that's a good price.
You could probably like full-time flip if you wanted to. If you looked hard enough and like knew what you were looking at.
I could, and I don't know why have never. Well, I don't know. I just hate dealing with the DMV
because you have
stuff.
a million other things to do, and the people
that is true.
The people that
suck.
Answer those things. It's like,
have you sold stuff on Marketplace?
Yes, it drives me insane.
Yeah,
like, have it. You can have it for free.
One out of every 50 people that
care.
replies is actually interested. Yeah. Like, is this available? Like 2 seconds later, yeah, it's available. Never replies again. You're like,
I had a guy like that. So our whole decoy spreads out, right? And I go into my decoy shed. I'm like, oh my God, there's just like bags and bags of stuff that hasn't been used in years, all like literally new. So I was like, counting them all up, there's like 85 of them put them on Marketplace, and like everyone's just like, ding. So I was like, $40. Came with a bag, 2 bags. The guy's like, really? $40 for 80 something decoys? I was like, dude, like, I'll drop them off at your house. Like, I just want them out of my yard. And he's like, oh, thanks. But the craziest thing was I sold an old Carhartt jacket. The thing is like ripped up. And I had like 25 replies in the first half an hour. And my wife's like, what is going on? I was like, people literally are like, I'll double the price, ship it out here to New York. I'm like, no, it's sold. And I was like, I wanted to give this thing away.
Yeah.
And it was
like a collector's item.
Apparently. And so I sold another one, the same thing. It was like, I was like back to back, but pretty funny.
Crazy.
But so welcome back for another episode of Save It for the Blind. Jeff Smith is here with Carson Odegard, and we are here with Jerred Dixon. He is the director of Staten Island Conservation Farms and Ranches. So Jerred, appreciate you coming on. We've been in a partnership with you in the island here for a number of years, offering public land hunting opportunities on the island. But I think this island is special. It's so big. It's so diverse, from corn, triticale, potatoes, pastures, whatever it may be. It's a pretty special place in California, but just want to say thank you so much for coming on. If you could just kind of tell us kind of your role within the California farms and ranches, and then kind of the correlation with the Nature Conservancy as well.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's kind of a long time coming, I guess.
Yeah, we've talked about it for a while.
Yeah, since you guys kind of started. Been in this position for a few years. Been here at the Staten Island for about 5 now. It's gone by kind of quick, but a lot has changed in the last 5 years, as you guys know.
Mm-hmm.
The correlation between conservation farms, ranches, and TNC. TNC owns the island, owned it since 2001, and bought it sole purpose, put a conservation easement on it for the wintering habitat, mainly for sandhill cranes, and then the benefit of all water birds that kind of use the island as well. It's sitting in the middle of the Pacific Flyway. Have huge numbers, as you guys know, of ducks, geese, sandhills, shorebirds. I mean, you name it. Conservation easement, like I said, put on the island with some public funding from DWR in partnership with TNC at the time in 2001, mainly to keep it in row crops so it can be for the main sole purpose of habitat and conservation-friendly farming.
When you talk about row crops, you're mostly talking about like corn,
wheat,
okay.
rice. Now, at the last 5 years, no permanent crops, so no vines, no trees.
Oh, great.
Interesting.
So a time where there's vineyards popping up everywhere.
And we're losing ground constantly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of like to preserve that aspect of habitat and the correlation with farming and habitat in the mixture. I mean, birds love habitat, they love the water, they love all those things, but they need that food value, that foraging value is really big, and that's where we come into play.
Nice. Now, what about like the pastures and things like that? With the conservation easement, you guys are still able to have cattle out here and other types of farming, practices?
Yeah, and TNC has like this mosaic of different land uses, and the pasture actually comes into effect where you have ground nesting birds, and we actually on the pasture there's not very many cattle out there. It's not overgrazed. It's like a prescribed grazing, and there's maybe out of the 9,000 acres that we do have here on the island, there's 500-ish acres of pasture. And then if you look like during the season, the geese, when it gets a little warmer, they go to the grasses and they love.
Out there
There's a bunch stacking up in that field by the house.
There'll be thousands out there, and they did a study on it. It was about 11 cackling geese equals 1 cow on the daily.
Really?
On the daily?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's what it comes out.
You got to think how many thousands of those geese are in that field and how many cows that comes out of. That's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, like what's peak Aleutian numbers out here?
We'll be pushing 40, 50,000 during the peak. We have about 30,000 on an island right now.
Okay.
Not foraging, but roosting.
Okay.
Mainly when you get to the foraging, there'll be about half that.
Yeah,
California now, I know it's in the hundreds of thousands, but they start as soon as we start harvesting. I mean, it's like a dinner bell for them. We start harvesting corn, and they're within the 3 days they're here, and then they stay all the way through into March.
Yeah, that's what I was surprised at when we first started getting involved out here. Was like we're just starting to flood up properties, et cetera. Like pintail's starting to get here, and you guys are starting to harvest corn, and we're just kind of looking at blinds. It was like boom, the number of Aleutians out here was nuts. And this is early October, et cetera. Where historically I never thought that in my mind, like they were here that early, but.
And then they
never have historically. They never
yeah.
have. They never really have in the past. Since probably 2017, 16 is when we really started getting a lot bigger numbers. And it could have been the management style that we have, and also the management change maybe in San Luis down south.
Oh, gotcha.
There could have been some correlation with that. They kind of short stopped going all the way to Modesto now, and they kind of been hanging here a lot more lately.
Interesting.
Isn't that the Mepps Ranch or something
Mapes,
down
yeah.
there?
Mapes
Ranch. Yeah.
They did it for a long time, and the change, I don't know if we've changed in our practices or if they've changed in theirs. It's just something's happened in the past 5-10 years that they've really hammered us. So
speak to some of those biggest changes. I know it's changed since we've been here with the big introduction in rice. But I know you've talked about you guys are doing wetlands more now and not as much corn. And can you also hit on the elevation of the delta and you guys trying to bring that soil back up? Yeah.
So I'll start with that elevation side.
Yeah.
The delta is all peat soil. So we have highly, highly organic soils in the delta. About 150 to 200,000 acres is above 20% organic matter in the soil. So it's real light, fluffy, just peat soil. And it's on some portions, it's up to 30 feet below sea level. Like on the island here, we're about 20 to 25 on the lower end.
Oh, wow.
Where your guys' blinds are is 15 to 20, below sea level. So if you jump up on the levee, you can really see that difference if you jump up there. But those peat soils, when you dry them out and you take away that water column, it oxidizes, and we produce a lot of, greenhouse gases, carbon, methane, all those different things that go in the atmosphere. When you grow rice, it kind of mitigates those. You're generating, or you're basically taking in a lot of the carbon when you're growing it, and then you're putting it underwater, which minimizes the carbon dioxide effect.
Okay.
So that was a big push in the climate side. And then being able to save that subsidence. So when you're oxidizing, you're losing elevation up to 2 inches growing corn every year in the delta. Depending on how heavy the peat soils are, or how thick they are. So that was a big push. We're losing elevation every year. The farther we lose elevation, the more stress it puts on our levee systems. It could, jeopardize the whole integrity of 2/3 of our water that goes to the south down to LA and the Central Valley.
So you're actively sinking, basically.
We're actively sinking.
That's wild.
We're stopping that with rice, and wetlands are reversing it actually.
So traditionally with the rice, say 10 years ago, 20 years ago, would it just be corn. Would there ever be a rotation crop
You
in
can
there?
go to potatoes or something
Okay.
like that, but the science that we actually put behind this place is like a living laboratory. We have everybody out. We have Hydrofocus. We have UCANR with the cooperative extensions. We have UC Davis. We have UC Berkeley. I mean, there's at any given time, there could be 20 different projects going on here.
Yeah.
There's a ton of different research that we have all the time. So with that, when you're growing corn, or drying out that column, you're subsiding all the time. So you have to get it into that aquaculture, that wet stage where it goes anaerobic, so the microbes don't basically eat and off-put gases into the atmosphere. That's what we're trying to reduce
Gotcha.
as much as possible.
Hence the wetlands. And you guys have a wetland project, bigger one coming up?
Yeah, the wetland project is a long time coming. We got Prop 1 money back in 2017. We did a little planning and permitting process through that. That finished up last year in March. Now we're working on a Delta Conservancy grant that's going to produce about half of our 1,000 acre goal in the near future. So hopefully this year we'll get that construction phase if we meet some of our deadlines. So that'll transition into some semi-permanent wetlands, some managed seasonal wetlands, and then a little bit of rice kind of mixed into that for feed value. So it's a mosaic, like that mosaic term, that different kind of use habitat that we can actually do it for the subsidence reversal. We can hit the habitat value for all kinds of different birds, coming through at different times, and then that foraging value in that 1,000 acres as well. So we don't have just the hotel. We have the hotel, the restaurant. We have all the, we hit all the buttons.
I know, speaking for the hunt program, like our numbers this year will be the best we've ever had at Staten, and this is the most rice you guys have had, right? So I don't know if there's a correlation yet, but our hunters love it because they don't have to trudge through a flooded cornfield like they used
Those
to.
were so hard. Oh my goodness!
I heard you guys' podcast a few weeks ago with Chris Koenig and stuff on there, dude. Those were brutal days.
They're hard.
It was the hardest day I ever had with CWA was when I had to come here and picked up every single blind in one day because our tech that was working with me got in a car accident on the way here and I was by myself. And I went to every single blind there and back, fully flooded, pulling decoys in those in the PVC post out.
PVC post to mark your ways out there.
That was the hardest day I've ever had with CWA because those fields, just going in one field there and back would kill you. It was rough.
It was rough. And then the spud ditches.
And the 4-foot drain ditches.
And now we got rice with road levees and you can just walk down a road to the blind and it's great and shoot more ducks and geese than we have.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
Definitely is a win-win for us.
I think that change came in the last few years, more or less. The rice has been a big one because we used to flood the corn and you'd have like different depths, right? You'd have your dry on the very top end. You'd be 4 feet deep on the lower end and kind of like a band of perfect depth that you'd kind of try to set your blinds and then you'd get birds only in that 10 to 20% of the field. With the rice, everything's within like 2 inches.
That's true.
Of what you can actually manage to get that at. So you have 90% of the field now that you're being able to manage to perfect depth, perfect habitat for all those birds. And we have 4,000 acres of it now.
Yeah.
It's like almost half the island's going to be under wetlands, 1,000 acres wetlands and 4,000 acres of rice. And then we started, because we're flooding it at different time periods, you're getting fresh water kind of consistently. So you're having those birds stay here longer and being able to not have to push out and go to different properties. You're kind of holding them here, but you're giving them different types that they really do like.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then the feed value. I mean, we have a lot of edge habitat. We plant a lot of, closed zone stuff. And, the levee systems are all planted with either corn or triticale. And there's a lot more feed value that's later in the year that they don't deplete like they used to in November, December. And then everything's flooded where it starts to decompose and there's no more food.
Yeah. Right.
Like we have it all the way into, February, March now.
And that gross rotting corn water, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that one, it's unique location and what you have here, but there's just always birds here. No matter what they might be ducks towards later of the year, but or snows or Aleutians or swans or cranes. Like if you're a bird person, it's just cool just to be out here because there's just always a ton of wildlife that you could actually see and view, etc. But you grew up locally. You are a duck hunter. How has that passion kind of transcribed into your career now and what you're doing and giving back to the Delta and working with us and all those good things?
Yeah, so growing up here, I've always kind of been in that not even kind of subconsciously being in that conservation minded farming way, because I've always wanted to have that edge habitat. I've always wanted to see roosters. I've always wanted to see the birds and all the different things like you can be able to just see, not let alone hunt. I mean, being a hunter, you want to be able to go out there and shoot a ton of birds or see a bunch of birds when you go out. You don't want to just see, pictures of sunrises all the time. So having that attitude and that aspect to my background of just creating the habitat and let alone farming and nothing being above the other. You still have to make the money to be able to produce all this stuff. You still have to, if we just had habitat here and didn't care about the farming so much, something would have to give, and we wouldn't be making the money that we are to be able to just solely focus on conservation friendly farming. It's a give and take all around.
Right.
So
I think where your background's unique is, a lot of people might have the passion for it, but you actually have the passion for it and the farming background to back that up. And not a lot of people have that. There's a lot of farmers that they love the resource, but they're not necessarily, they're not as conservation minded or like a hunter or,
you get biologists that aren't hunters, and then they're focused on other stuff and maybe don't look at the,
you can't see the whole picture.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to work with all different groups, farmers, conservationists, et cetera. And it's really hard if you've never been in that other side of those shoes to see.
You're getting pulled a million different ways, especially in my position. Like I get pulled in 1,000 different directions, and everybody wants something and somebody else is screwing them on doing what they want. And it's like, you have to see all sides of what that issue is always. So that's kind of where I come into play on my on my job title now, I guess. But it's frustrating at times, but it's very rewarding at the end of the day.
Now, what about water is a touchy subject, and being in the Delta, it would seem like it would be, it's so easy. There's water everywhere. But what are some of the challenges that you guys were, even in the drought years, like working with your water rights and putting water on the landscape in some of those years where down here in the Delta, you're always not very far from it, right? Either in the ground or over the levee.
For us, the water is very plentiful. I mean, I always tell everybody, like, our water rights are the best. They'd have to shut off the city of Sacramento before they get to us. But in all accounts, like, you try to do your best on water savings and water quality management and all those things, because it is a plentiful but finite resource. And, the South Central Valley and everybody, they need a lot of water. I understand that. We're never going to cut the water off to anybody down south. But we also have to manage the water that we do get through the Delta and conserve it and make it the best quality that it can. We can't just put pesticides. We can't just dump everything into the rivers. It just ruins it for everyone. So we try to do our best on water recirculation pumps. We're partnering with fish-friendly farming. We partner with Cal Trout and try to pump, fish food back into the rivers during this time of when they're coming back down. The smolts are coming back down through the system. Just a lot of different aspects like that, and like not pumping so much turbidity, like putting all of our soil back into erosion control and doing a lot of those different things. I mean, we've put millions and millions of dollars in this place in the last 5 years that I've been here alone, and that is just to the effect of trying to conserve a lot of water, a lot of soil, and protect and fortify our levee systems from actually, flooding this island. I mean, it's a big island, and if this place flooded, it'd be detrimental to a lot of the Delta. We have 2 of the main rivers of the 3 that feed fresh water from the Sacramento River into the San Joaquin, which go to Clifton Court Fort Bay. So the North Fork and the South Fork McCollum are the 2 that come on the Delta Cross Channel that go right around the sides of both sides of our island. The natural one's Georgiana Slough, but they all tie into the San Joaquin, and this is a major part of the system. Major part.
Being so large, are you guys your own rec district?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, really? We have our own reclamation district, yeah. One APN number here, everything. Like, it's very unique.
So wild. So, what's the history of the island previous to like TNC owned it? Was like one family owned for a long time?
It was actually owned by a big construction company, M&T, out of Chico.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's
And
why
then
the M&T sign.
M&T,
at the,
yeah.
I passed that today. I was like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, if you look up in Chico, there's an M&T big, huge construction company, Milton Towns.
Yeah.
And it was owned by them prior to Pac Trust was a teachers pension union or whatever that was out of the Pacific Northwest, and then we bought it from them in 2001.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It has to be that same M&T ranch that's up by Yanoseko. Probably.
Oh, I know
Yep.
exactly. What
Used to be a lot of rice, and they put it into orchards, but that's interesting. Yeah, I saw that too, and never really.
It just hit me that I've driven past that sign plenty of times, but I was looking at it, I'm like, M&T stands for nothing that I know out here. I was like trying to put some words together. I'm like, doesn't make sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now I get it.
So this island, and I didn't say it before, but this island was like out of the 9,200 acres, 8,500 acres was grown in corn prior to probably 2014.
Oh, wow.
It was corn wall to wall. There was some potatoes. There was a little bit of pasture at that time. Some triticale here and there.
What was the first year we got out here?
I was
2017?
trying to think of that.
17, 18?
Yeah, I think it's 17, 18.
And even then, which is 3 years after that, there was still a lot of corn.
Yeah.
Of
corn.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that time we had, in 2018 was when our first conversion of rice, and we was 350 acres.
That's it.
And
Wow.
since 19, when I got here in the end of 19, I've put in a ton. We just finished our last iteration. It's probably like 4,500 acres converted now.
Nice.
Yeah, on a rotation, a 5-year rotation. We just rotated our first one. Our first cohort of 350 acres was back to corn for a year, then rice again for 5.
Okay, so that's where you're talking rotation. You're going to be rice 5, corn 1, rice 5.
Yeah, we need that time to kind of touch up fields in between. You got to kind of not re-level, but kind of touch them up, rebuild some levees, do some different work to the ditches and stuff. And then we also use that time to kind of change our chemistry. So we get a lot of water grass. And I always tell everybody there's 100,000 weed seeds per cubic foot of soil here on peat soils. So we're battling water grass and smart weed and everything constantly with
all
the
the
rice.
stuff that people want to grow when they have their duck clubs. You're just like, get out.
How do I grow the food?
Yeah. Well, we don't
Take a bunch of
Add
dirt
water.
take a bunch of dirt from the delta and just put it out there.
That's true. Well, what's
wild.
wild is like Quimby, right? It's
Yep.
like it's basically most of it is smart weed, and we don't even irrigate it. It's just you just
It
draw
just
the water
grows.
down, disc mow, and it comes.
just-
It's like
The moisture in the soil just explodes.
and like this water grass heads are like as big as your hand, and you're like, people would die for this stuff. You know, just 2 hours north up the road, and they're trying to grow these weeds. But yeah, the Delta is something else in terms of the soil and all
Yeah,
that.
the North Valley, when you get up to the rice country up there, you're looking at like, if you get 0.5% organic matter in that soil, you're doing something good. It's just not there.
Yeah.
You come down here, and this is where all the expanse and stuff from the watershed, from the gold rush era, like all of that stuff came down here and settled in, and then we had the decomposing tule masses and just all that organic material, just biomass, just really built up the soils here
Right.
for hundreds, thousands, millions of years.
Yeah, that's what I always like. Would love to go back to the Delta pre-human or
Pre-levied.
Pre-levees.
Yeah, I mean, just being in like a canoe going out, it had to be like the coolest marsh ever. Think about it.
I think you'd see a pile of tules.
Probably, but I mean,
all the levee systems. The rivers, the channels were there. There were some levees because it was all sand that would just kind of flow out. So there were some high spots, some lows, and channel systems for sure. But prior to like 1900, that's what it predominantly was. A bunch of just marshlands.
How many tractors do you think are buried out here from those early days of getting the levees going?
So when we go by in all of our maps and stuff, and when we talk like in farm talk, it's camps. So you go by this camp, right? Like you guys have Camp 5, a little bit in Camp 4, and Camp 6 and 7. So there's 36 camps on this whole island. And that was like back in the turn of the century when they drained everything off. Each family had their own camp. And when they would take like their boxes to the front of the island to distribute, it had their number of camp, and that's how they get paid. And then they distribute that to their family. So there was all in the levee system. There was housing and farm housing and everything. And that was all camps.
No way.
When they talk about that throughout the whole Delta, everybody has it on their islands.
So there's just
All
like
big
artifacts buried
Yep.
everywhere underneath all this stuff.
everywhere.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll find cars in the side of the levees. You'll find it's wild. There's a lot of stuff out here.
Yeah. Well, it's like in Sassoon, there's technically wild asparagus now, but back in the old days in the farms and stuff. But
There used to be
yeah.
thousands of acres of asparagus here, but probably 300 acres, 400 acres now.
Yeah. Huh.
Big time.
That's so crazy. It's cool, but I think we're finally starting to head in the right direction.
Hopefully.
We'll see. Conservation minded, but
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit about the work that you guys are doing with CDFW? I don't know if you guys are working with the Fish and Wildlife Service on the
USGS.
Aleutians and collaring and kind of what they're trying to do there and see there.
Yeah, we're doing a lot with CDFW on the Aleutian, and then USGS with the banding of sandhill cranes.
Oh, okay.
So we do both. Right now we're doing the USGS on the cranes. We're trying to catch another 25 between here and the North Valley. Last year we did 18, one died, we did 2 more, so we have 19 total from last year. So we're tracking those GPS leg units on those like continuously.
Are those rocket net caught?
Yeah.
Are they mean when you? I feel like they'd be
They're
mean when
the
you get your
worst.
hands on
Like
them.
you're wearing goggles and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
that
Yeah,
sounds terrifying.
I help out. I try to get into it as much as possible. So one bit the shit out of me last week right on the back of my arm. They're mean, vicious.
Yeah.
They'll claw you. You got to be real careful. They'll cut all your clothes from just, raking you with their claws and everything. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Does someone grab the beak and then someone? Okay.
You have to have at least 3 people there because somebody's got to get a head and somebody's got to get a
That's
legs.
crazy.
And then somebody's got to hold on to them because they're big.
Are they trying to do adults or?
We're just trying to do graders
Okay.
mainly. We did 6 lessers, I believe, last year just to kind of track them because they go all the way back up to Alaska and stuff.
Okay.
Our graders kind of stay not local, but they'll get up into the high desert, open expanses. They'll get up to Oregon and Idaho, and then they'll go a little further. They'll go to Canada and stuff, but it's a totally different route for them.
That's cool.
What about the Aleutians you're putting the collar? Where are those going?
They are going all the way back up to Alaska.
Okay.
So they'll go all the way into the Aleutian Islands and hang out there for, until they come back. But they'll stop in on the North Coast all the way up through the Butte and all that stuff up there. And then they'll come down. They winter here all the way down into Modesto. So we get a large portion of them throughout. Like you said, it was, I don't know, half or whatever, 3/4 come through here.
Is there a difference? I don't know this. I thought I saw something on it. Like we classify them, I think, as Aleutians in our like hunter sheet, but then we have like cackling goose. It's the same thing. And I've heard some people, one has a ring, one doesn't.
They're subspecies.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like 6 subspecies, I believe, and they all have different names, and they all have like a slightly different variation to them. But yeah,
because we've told our people like they're probably going to be Aleutian cackling geese, and we have like 2 things on our hunter checks basically, and it's like just put all of them under one at this point because they're the same.
We get a lot of Aleutians. You will get some cacklers that don't have any rings. You'll get some Robertsons or whatever they are. They have the darker breasts. There's all kinds of different ones. But sometimes you'll get like a juvie Aleutian that won't have a ring, or you'll get one that has a huge collar that almost touches his ears. Those are the cool ones. We started that collaring with CDFW probably like 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, and we had a rough time in the beginning. It was real hit or miss. We didn't have like the sections, and it was real tough. Back in the day when they were doing it in Modesto at the Mapes Ranch, I mean, it was like they'd harvest the corn, they'd disc a little section, they'd set out their nets, and it's like they get thousands of them just pile into that one spot. They'd shoot them, a couple hundred of them at a time, and rocket net them, and then collar them, and it was pretty much done. We have so much space here.
Yeah.
And so much corn, so much rice harvested at that time of year that it's really hard to pinpoint them. Like you have to move nets. You have to really be on them and get them early and quick and often. So this year we did 142 on 4 shots.
Okay.
And that's collars or
Collars.
Wow.
Yeah, we did 142 Aleutians collared, and then they get a leg band too. And those are all, still kicking around. I guess a few of them were shot, but like we were talking kind of before, like there's thousands of them. We shoot a ton of them out here. I haven't shot one in years.
Yeah.
Like you can go out with a spotting scope and see them all the time, but to actually get one to come into your spread, and I'm sure they're there. We just never shoot them.
Well, I've been on a couple hunts in the Delta where it's like they're so close. You're looking.
Yeah.
And I remember a volley we shot into, and they weren't far, and a caller landed in front of me dead. And I was like, I was looking hard.
Yeah.
Never saw a blue and white collar on a black, necked bird. You'd think it would just pop right out, and it doesn't. But
yeah. So we collar a ton of them. I mean, we can go into the whole history of them too, because they were almost extinct like in the 30s. Like there was a few hundred of them left.
Yeah.
And mainly because of Russia released a lot of, during the fur trade and everything like that, they released a bunch of fox and stuff in Aleutian Islands and just decimated them.
Yeah, they weren't used to the predators.
No,
yeah.
They had no predators, and then they just got decimated. And then they got put on the Endangered Species Act. One of the first ones, actually, to be put on the endangered species list. And then started killing off a lot of those, trapping and pretty much getting rid of a lot of the fox and stuff. And they made a huge resurgence, and actually were taken off in 91. There was probably 70,000 in 2001-ish. And now they're up to a couple 100,000. I mean,
that's crazy.
Pretty wild.
I remember when they first started the late season Aleutian goose hunt on the coast, and you could draw pastures essentially through the share program. That's kind of where that's where it kind of first started in terms of the access stuff.
Well, we were never able to shoot them here until probably 2004, 5, 6. I don't know. We weren't even allowed to shoot Aleutians. I mean, cacklers.
Yeah.
Even. I mean, you rarely ever seen them.
Right.
And then
they black out the sky.
They're the number one bird pretty much here.
Yeah.
I mean, the last couple of years, you'd have the late season speck hunt and snow hunt, and there would just be piles of Aleutians just getting in your decoys. You couldn't shoot them till I think this year's the first year they could shoot them on Saturday and Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is true. Yep.
I mean, it's one of the better like stories on recovery that we've had.
There must be obviously more and more of them, because we've shot a decent amount at like Grizzly Ranch in Denverton this year, which we normally shoot like if there's a fog day, but there's been multiple days where there's like 3 or 4 killed just flying through the marsh. And it's like, we don't normally have that.
They're definitely starting to expand their territory here for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that Sandhills, we're getting a big resurgence back, and it's in part by the conservation efforts. And we have a lot of bird returns money coming into the play now that we can actually pay farmers to produce habitat at the type and time that we want it. That's conducive to when they're here and what they need. So it's beginning to see the efforts that we've been doing, trying to see the benefits of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fruition.
It's got to feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty cool.
We've seen it. I mean, just on some of our own properties, getting them and they were deteriorating or falling apart, and then you do the habitat work and put in the effort, and then magically, build
wow,
it, build it,
they
and
came
come.
back.
Yeah,
Go figure.
Build it, they'll come. Yeah. But
doing that, I mean, the Aleutians and doing the collars and stuff, it makes it easy for us to see it, without spending a ton of money to put GPS locators on each one of them, because they're like $1,000 a piece to put those on. I mean, we spend a fortune trying to. TNC actually the Nature Conservancy bought another 25 this year to do cranes, because we know how important that work is, and that information that we're getting now from last year's USGS did a 25. So it helps a lot in our efforts. We don't have to do the surveys and stuff like we normally do, forage and roost surveys. And I mean, it takes a lot of manpower to go out and count, 30,000 geese or 15,000 sandhills at the time of year that we need to. So it helps a lot to be able to get that information when you just get it a printout on a map, So it's kind of cool to see. Then you can, like with the Aleutians, you can read their collars. It has like a 3-digit alphanumerical code on their collar.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go out with a spotting scope, you can read, then they go back into their database, and you can see like the habitat they're using, how old they are, where they're at, what time they're there. All kinds of different things come from that. You can get populations. You can do, all kinds of different things.
Does any of the like citizen science help you at all? Because you guys have so many people here pretty much every day of the year with
the birders
very
here.
high-powered, expensive binoculars and spotting scopes. I'm sure they're probably reporting if they see them.
Yeah. So there's a database, and I don't even know what it is. I just turn it into Alan, or a biologist at the time. I just turn it in what I see. But we do survey counts with USGS and U.S. Fish and Wildlife and CDFW and everything. So they do all of their counts, and they go through like a tour. They do their sections, and it's all through like their wintering habitat and kind of mark everything down. And then they do a full survey like that. It makes it where you can actually tell how we're doing. Are our efforts doing anything? What's the survival rates? What's, habitat uses that are using best? Like all kinds of things.
Yeah. And you guys as in-house biologists, they're doing surveys and stuff all the time on their own throughout the year.
Yeah. So we do 2 days a week, Tuesday, Thursdays, because they're off hunt days.
Mhm.
Tuesday, Thursdays, we do one a forage and one a roost counts. So we have 3 bird techs that go out, technicians that go out and help out with Alan on our biology team. We have a conservation manager on staff here at Staten, and then they work also with the Nature Conservancy in the North Valley with our scientists and stuff up there.
Gotcha. Can you talk to the sandhill cranes to move their roost time back so we could hunt a little bit longer?
Yeah, that's that 10 o'clock time period. Huh? It kills you.
I can't tell you how many times every year. Why do we have to stop at 10? I'm like, not our decision. Something about sandhills coming back. I was like, I don't know.
You don't see it in like when you're out there hunting too much until you can actually tell like the birds know the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
And at 10 o'clock, they're like, hey, time to come back and feed, guys. Let's head on in.
Yep.
So it's like having shoot days. You got to give them a rest. You got to give them time to come back in. It's the name of the game. I know it sucks when you're out there and you're having a great day, or they're just starting at 9 o'clock to actually have a good flight.
Yeah, your fog burns off at like
9:30. The fog bank, that's probably what hurts it. But on the sunny days, I mean, for the most part, if it's a good day, they're pretty much wrapped up by then. You know?
So it's been discussed, but that 10 o'clock time period, I mean, I don't even like to stay out there past 9, 10 o'clock when I'm in if I'm not having a good day, I don't want to sit out there and watch the sun come up and get sunburned the whole time.
Well, it's funny. I think most people, like, if it is a slower day at their refuge, like they're packed up by 9, but like you give someone a deadline and it's like, no, we're hunting until 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever it is. But if there's no time limit, you'll have guys come up in like 8:30. Oh, slow. Okay.
That's very true. I didn't think about that.
If when it's 1 o'clock, like you're going to stay there till 1 o'clock,
Yep. And you do see the difference in the birds. That's why we have so many birds. The bird numbers are just here. I mean, it is what it is.
And I've heard people say, oh, well, 10 o'clock, the birds started to come back in. I'm like, yeah, because they're used to nobody being out there. Like, of course they're going to come back in. That's why they come in at the refuge after shoot time, because they know.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's like the old question of, switching the close zones. What is that going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to have one good shoot in the close zone, and then they're going to go sit over in the other close zone that's not getting hunted. Yep. That was the hunt area. It just they're birds. They're going to go where it's safe.
You got to give them time to rest. You got to give them a break. You got to give them time to loaf. That's or you're not going to have them here. You got to give them a break. So that's why we do that.
It's working. I mean, like I said, we're shooting better here than probably any other property we have other than Quimby, which is also in the Delta. And it's just been consistent. I looked at Wednesday's averages and they shot a 3.5 and all of our other properties are like a 0.5.
Yeah. Well, I think out here is like, if you get drawn, you never know if that's going to be your day. Like it could be truly a hunt of a lifetime. Yeah. You just have that opportunity to have the best goose hunt ever or a just super fast duck hunt. You have that opportunity. You just don't know if it's going to be that day or not, but it's there. Yeah. I mean,
the ceiling is high.
If you can draw a wind day here, it's lights out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like,
our veterans had a wind day last Saturday. They shot a 7-bird average.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can't ask for any better than that.
No, they beat them up.
And a full moon, the whole 9,
It gets pretty western out here. It gets wild when you have the right conditions. I mean, on Bluebird Day, like we had this week, when you go out there and get sunburnt, it's tough. But it's going to be tough everywhere. The birds just sit and don't want to.
But you're going to see birds here.
Oh yeah,
like you're going to see geese flying or ducks, etc. Yeah. Where some places when it's dead, it is absolutely dead. Yeah. Like you just don't see ducks, But that's what's special about out here, in my opinion.
Yeah. But we have a lot of close zones. There's a lot of feed. There's a lot of roost. There's just
it's like its own little refuge, basically. Yeah. I mean, not even a little refuge, a big refuge.
9,200 acres.
9,200.
Yeah, so it's its own refuge that we're lucky enough to have a few blinds in that people get to hunt. It's like, can you imagine if Delavan had 5 blinds and that was it?
Yeah, that's a good point there. I remember the first time I came out here, I was like, met someone at the top, like, oh, we'll go to the bottom. It was like 20-minute drive later. It was like, okay, we're at the bottom. I was like, oh my God, this place is ginormous.
Yeah,
you know?
there's 26 miles of levee around it.
Oh my
no
God,
kidding.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Everybody's like, oh, you're just going to the island, you know. How do you put 25, 30,000 miles on your truck every year? It's like, well, I drive to the island a couple times a day and around. I put 200 miles, 150 miles a day on my truck. Like, no problem.
Yeah. Those aren't easy miles, too. Those are slow, you know, bumpy roads. Dusty.
Yeah.
Oof. The Delta dust, that one will get your truck, you know, all in the crevices, man.
Interior, exterior, you name it. Yeah.
You can't avoid that.
No. During the summer, I mean, most of the guys will put rubber bands on their pant legs because it just gets
That's a good idea.
fine dust just gets everywhere.
Yeah.
It's different.
I could see
It's like
that.
farming on the moon.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
Mhm.
It's kind of like being down in Bakersfield. It's like it's just the
Different.
soil and everything. It's just so different than anywhere
Different.
else.
Yep.
Like that hazy from everyone disking and stuff.
Yeah. It's cool here, though. It's unique. I love it here.
Yeah, they're middle. You're in the middle of everything, you know? It's got to
Yeah.
come through you or stay here for a while, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, pretty
Definitely a little playground.
damn cool. What are some of the things that you guys are going to be doing here in the near future in terms of, you know,
Projects wise?
yeah, like what's
5,
going to
10
be your
years
biggest?
next year?
Yeah, exactly.
So in the next couple years, hopefully we have this wetland completed. We're doing the privately fund or the publicly funded side where we already have the grant funds for half of the wetlands. And then we're going to privately fund the other half. And we're going to kind of do that cutting the green tape initiative to see what we can do in our repertoire, our legislature, and try to push through how we can get these wetlands pushed through a lot quicker and easier and less funding for them and everything else. Because we need to do this on a lot more of the Delta that's not really farmable, but that we're still trying to keep available. There's some goals with California and the government trying to get more and more of the wetlands in the Delta and restored wetlands.
Sequestration,
Everything. So we need to figure out how to do that in a cheaper manner because right now it's expensive and prevailing wage is expensive and permitting costs are expensive. And, you know, trying to do a do-good project, it's really hard when the environmentalists get in the way of other environmentalists. It's really tough.
Yeah.
So we've been working on this since 2017 for almost 10 years.
Oh, wow.
We might get this completed in 10 years. Trying to create we're not selling it. We are literally trying to convert it from farm ground to a wetland. So
yeah, that's crazy.
Permanent in a permanent wetland. You're not.
It'll be it'll be 40 years at least.
Okay.
It'll be under a 40-year commitment for sure.
Gotcha.
It'll never come out.
Right.
It's just one of those things like we're trying to do a good thing.
Yeah.
Why are you holding us up?
Exactly.
Like,
So that's the tough part, you know, the frustrating part of the whole thing. And when you're trying to do, I mean, it's going to better all of us. I mean, it's going to better the duck hunting. It's going to better the habitat, the resource, everything. It's going to rebuild the soils. It's going to be a carbon sink. It's going to do all those things. So water quality, I mean, you name it. I mean, it hits every single aspect of what we're trying to do in our goals. So we're going to try to do both sides of that, the public and private side, just so we can kind of proof out to see how that's going to work out. So hopefully in the next few years we get that completed. The rice is almost done. Our levee systems are kind of like an ongoing thing with projects that we're doing with DWR and trying to get funded through that because that's not cheap at all because that's a public works project and that's prevailing wage. And we've done 3 miles in the last few years. And those 3 miles cost probably close to almost $3 million a mile, maybe a little bit more.
Jeez.
Yeah, maybe closer to 5.
And you're just repairing just riprap levees, or what?
We're
are you doing
doing
with
riprap
those?
levees, but we're also doing resloping the interior, putting a ballast berm in the
Okay.
interior, kind of fortifying our really bad areas. And we phased it out, so we have like the worst comes first, and then we kind of go down the line. So. And we're also going to do some riverine habitat on the interior of the water side. That we're going to degrade some levees. So we did an offset levee to kind of make that space. we'll make a shelf, plant riverine habitat, different aquatic and like trees and stuff for different uses, purposes.
Gotcha.
So that'll be done here in the next couple of years. Probably in the next 5 years, there won't be much left to do on Staten. It'll just be management and uptick and doing all those things. My biggest goal now is trying to do outreach. So this last year, we got approved with the Delta Conservancy to do a rice conversion program. So we're actually paying farmers to convert from dryland crops into rice, which last year we did like $800 an acre. This year we'll do for a 5-year commitment. And we only have like a 5-year grant. So this year we didn't do it all because we wanted some other kind of people that didn't know that it was out there to have the opportunity. So this year we'll do a 3-year commitment for half that rate, so $400 an acre, just to try to get more rice in the region. Habitats use is going to be one big one. Trying to save more ground, climate change, like the climate aspect of it, and then trying to get that value in the Delta. So it's been a pretty good project. When I started, we had probably 5,000 acres in the Delta in 2019. And this year we had 15,000.
Wow.
So we're starting to build, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to the North Valley. I mean, there's 500,000 acres. But, it's when we have drought years, there's like 300,000 acres less of rice in the North Valley that doesn't have that habitat for all the birds coming through. And we get flooded with just more and more birds. Like, for example, the sandhill cranes and Aleutians and everything, but sandhills, just to be for, an experiment, say, we have a normal 3,500 to 5,000 sandhills during December, January on a count. During 2019, we had 15,000. I mean, that number, because they didn't have the habitat. So we get that huge influx. And then with that comes all the snow geese. So we had 150, 180,000 snow geese, or all the geese combined, but all those geese came through and they were just wiping out crops, and they were here. And then you have huge die-offs. I mean, we were picking up 100, 150 geese a day, in the fields, and we were going out and doing all that. So it was detrimental to the population when you get stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
So it'd be really nice to kind of have the rice throughout the Delta, where we can kind of get that buffer and have a constant number of acres that's going to be consistent throughout.
It's like a backup Sac Valley. Sac Valley goes dry. They have stuff here, and it's not just a small portion. They can spread out, and you avoid that disease. They still have the food. I never thought about it that way.
Especially during the drought that you mentioned, like some of the islands were selling their water, so they didn't necessarily have the normal crops as well. So you had these bigger islands that were essentially just dry.
And they weren't selling. We can't sell our water here because it's all riparian. They were making it accessible to be able to ship south. So we were doing like dry land crops, like triticale wheat, different barley, different stuff like that. But that had a different aspect on the agricultural side, the agronomics of it. We had an abundance of wheat that next year and bales. So all that price just tanked and no one could get rid of it. So it's like to have something where you can consistently have a market that's resilient and like stays the same, consistent acres all the time is super beneficial for not only us on the ag side, but also for the habitat and the bird side, the migratory bird side, that they come down and they know like every year we're going to be coming to Staten. There's going to be rice, there's going to be food, there's going to be habitat for all that.
Like what's the difference on, let's say, a rice or a corn crop, like
money wise?
Yeah, in terms of like putting it in and what your profit is compared to rice.
I can do a lot better on rice once we have it established.
Okay.
The corn is just easy. It's a stable crop, but like these times right now, everything's low. Rice can go way up. Like during the drought, we had 300,000 acres. Price was phenomenal. I made all our money back that we had on 2,000 acres conversion costs. I paid for all that stuff that 1 year. And then it drops back down to what it is now because everybody just floods the market and we have an abundance of it. So it's that ebbs and flows. If you can have a consistent market, is even better.
But the corn market is continuing to go down?
It all kind of runs off of the other markets. So the dairy market and the cattle market and everything.
It's all silage corn, right?
Ours is not. Ours is all grain.
Oh,
ours
it is.
All goes to grain corn, yeah.
Is most of the Delta silage?
It'll go to silage on big silage years, but they'll do grain too.
Okay.
But when we have big silage years, like during the drought, especially, we have an abundance of water here, obviously. They don't have it in the South, so it'll go for way more money up here than it normally would.
Gotcha.
So, for example, like when we were having the drought, it was like $85 a ton is what we were selling it for here in the Delta. Right now, it's like 25, 30.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a big difference. And when you're doing 25, 30 tons the acre, you're making a good chunk of money. That's when you actually make, like, that's why it's kind of cool to be here, is because that's why my family came here in the turn of the century. I mean, my family farm, I'm fifth generation here. My kids will be sixth. So,
Wow.
yeah, they've been here since like 1904 or 1907, something like that. It's a lot of history.
Yeah.
And they came here because water.
Yeah.
Water in the dirt.
Smart.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I never knew any of that. As a non-farmer, you don't really even think of any of that stuff.
You just check to see where the birds are and what crop they're sitting in. Well, it's corn. Well, it's
What do they
rice.
like?
It's a potato field.
Yeah. I always tell this to the biologists and stuff, and they never pick it up because I know like both sides. I know the conservation and the, like you said, the farming side. But when it's warm and it gets warmer, like right now, all them birds are going to go to the grass.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Especially
when it gets
right
cold,
now.
when it gets cold, all of them go to that grain. They need that caloric intake where they want them carbs.
Yep.
And when it gets cold, they all go to the corn and rice. And I know that when this time of year, when it starts to warm up, they start to be on that grass and they're stinky.
Yes,
they get all
are.
nasty.
They are stinky when they're on the grass. But this is the time of the year. I mean,
They're just starting to switch. Stuff is greening up.
Yep.
I know. Well, coming in on the pastures, but just driving south, like the north to Consumnes, with Stone Lakes.
Stone Lakes,
all
yeah.
of that
The pasture ground up there.
They're just now all in there. A lot of them sleeping during the day and on that little bit of tow water there. But it's the time of the year, man. It's just total switch.
When everything starts to come down and everything comes down north, when it gets froze up north, then they start getting here. They really start to spread out.
Yeah.
And everybody's wheat fields start to get hammered.
Yeah, if we don't have a cold snap, late goose season is going to be all green field hunting.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be nothing
for
else.
Yep.
It's looking like that. Looking like the
65
forecast is going
degrees
to be
and
pretty.
sunny.
You're swatting mosquitoes the size of ducks out there. And it gets that. I hate that time.
I know. The mosquitoes are back now, which is
I just
crazy.
seen them last night. Yeah. It's not fun.
Yeah, I know.
It was like 70 degrees the other day.
I know.
Yeah, it's rough.
It is rough. A couple more weeks. You got any more big plans before the season closes?
Not really. Get the kids out. I have some buddies coming out from Utah. They want to come shoot some geese and stuff, so they don't get those back there.
At least it's going to be sunny.
It'll be sunny.
Yeah,
No.
you don't have to worry about the
They're
gray
froze up.
dome.
No gray
Yeah.
dome. Yeah.
I like the gray dome here. When we get the gray dome like that, it gets pretty decent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like the fog.
Oh, okay.
I get
Well,
the fog,
I
yeah.
get that.
I get the fog.
Yeah.
When we get the fog, we shoot good.
And you're in the right field, and they just
Oh,
come
yeah.
in through the fog because they just think
Yeah.
they need to be there.
Yeah, believe it or not, my job all day is scouting.
Yeah, exactly. Know where they are at all times.
Yeah, we know where they're all at.
Yeah.
We drive around and see.
Right. You're here all
They're
the time.
everywhere. Yeah.
Yep.
So you see their patterns and you see where they're going.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
But yeah, it's a good time.
Sweet, man. Can you tell me about the partnership between TNC and Conservation Farms and Ranches?
Yes. TNC, Nature Conservancy, owns the property. We are a related entity at CFNR that manages everything that happens on the island, from the farming aspects to the levee projects or the reclamation districts, to the conservation side of it, habitat wise, everything. So we do a big switch after farming season, goes straight into conservation, and it's conservation switch right back into the farming aspect of it. And during that conservation season, it's just like tours and different things that happen with the schooling districts and like all kinds of stuff. It's just birding season and hunting season and everything else. I mean, we have donors that come through all the time. I mean, this house we're sitting in right now, we call it the big house. This comes with you guys and doing all your programs, the women's hunts, the veterans hunts, the heritage hunts, all that stuff. You guys stay here over the weekends and during the week. It also gets filled in by donors and PNC, and we do big conferences here. I mean, it's used for that. This used to be the manager's house, but like we all live, all of us managers and myself, we all have our own home. So
I'd live here. This place is awesome. Yeah.
I like to get away when I need to get away. So, but it is awesome. But that correlation comes with, like, we have a board that I kind of speak to, and they oversee what's best for conservation farms and ranches and what's best for the island as a whole. In that same aspect, we don't get subsidized by anybody. Like, we get grants to do levee projects, and we get grants to do like everyone else in the Delta, and we get grants to do wetlands, which everybody else gets the same opportunities to go to. But we don't get subsidized on doing any of the habitat, any of the conservation stuff. That all comes from the farming on this island. And you don't really have to change up that many things to, you don't really make that much less money, and you don't have to give up a lot just to make something a little bit different to make that habitat value that much better.
Mm-hmm.
It's just doing different aspects and different, procedures. Like, we don't go through and disc or chisel any of our fields in the fall. We just chop them down, knock all the stubble down so they can get in and feed on all those residual grains throughout the whole winter. We don't go through and spray all the ditches because that's edge habitat for nesting birds. Like, the mallards out here during the summer months are phenomenal. It's crazy. You'll see a whole 2,000 feet or 3,000 feet of basically roads in between all the rice fields that are covered with, you can't even see the road because there's so many mallards on it, and that aspect has been a huge change in the last few years, just to try to generate as much habitat throughout the whole year instead of just doing it with flooded fields, So And that is a big thing that can happen throughout the Delta with just a few changes. It's actually cheaper for us to do a lot of the things we do than a normal farm, because guys aren't cheap, labor's not cheap, spray's not cheap, fertilizer's not cheap. I mean, all those things, I don't do half of the stuff that most guys do, during the regular season on a regular farm. And I do just as well as they do.
Yeah.
So you can change up a lot of things. And it's hard for, somebody that's been farming for their whole life to be able to like have a young kid. They call me a kid, because I'm almost 40, but I'm a kid to most of those guys, but some young kid coming out trying to tell them what to do. It's not telling what to do. It's showing them like, oh, you can still do all these things. I can actually make you more profit doing it like this. Way. And we still get all the benefits. It's a give and take no matter what. And it's better to be on the same side than trying to battle everybody.
Yep.
So that's where we kind of come into play and try to do that research here and try to push it out to everybody else too.
Nice. Well, you guys are doing a great job, and we appreciate the partnership through the hunt program and then some of the habitat work as well. But been an absolute pleasure. So, Jerred, thank you so much for joining us on
for having me.
Another Save It for the Blind podcast. Signing out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Save It for the Blind podcast. You can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.